Continuing reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, questions by Vidura. Which text are we on?
Should be 5.
5. Really? That's not what's on the TV.
I think it says 5.
Text 4. Nahyal partho dayastasya adorasya malatmanaha tasmin variyasi prashna sadhu vado pabrimitaha Nyahal partho dayastasya adorasya malatmanaha tasmin variyasi prashna sadhu vado pabrimitaha Nahyal partho dayastasya adorasya malatmanaha tasmin variyasi prashna sadhu vado pabrimitaha
Sadhu vado pabrimitaha
Partho dayastasya adorasya malatmanaha tasmin variyasi prashna sadhu vado pabrimitaha
Nahyal partho dayastasya vidurasya malatmanaha tasmin variyasi prashna sadhu pabrimitaha
Tasya vidurasyamatmanaha tasmin variyasi prashna sadhu vado pabrimitaha
Nahyaparto dasya vidurasya malatmanaha tasman variyasi prashna sadhu vado pabrimitaha
vidurasya malatmanaha tasmin variyasi prashna sadhu vado prabhirmitaha nayalpartado dayastasya viduryasya malatmanaha
Vidurasya
tasmin variyasi prashna
Tasmin variyasi prashna
sadhu vado prabhirmitaha
Sadhu vado praprimitaha
Nahyapatodayastasya
Nayalparto dayastasya
Vidurasyaamalatmanaha
Vidurasya malatmanaha
Tasmin variyasi prashna
Tasmin variyasi prashna
Sadhu vado pabrimhita.
Sadhu vado praprimitaha. Na, never. He, certainly. Alpa artha, small, unimportant purpose. Udaya, raised. Tasya, his. Vidurasya, of Vidura. Amala atmanaha, of the saintly man. Tasmin, in that. Variyasi, highly purposeful. Prashnaha, question. Saruvada, things approved by saints and sages. Upaprimhitaha, full with. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Saint Vidura was a great and pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his questions to His Grace Rishi Maitreya must have been very purposeful, on the highest level, and approved by learned circles. Purport. Questions and answers among different classes of men have different value. Inquiries by mercantile men in a business exchange cannot be expected to be highly purposeful in spiritual values. Questions and answers by different classes of men can be guessed by the caliber of the persons concerned. In Bhagavad Gita, the discussion was between Lord Sri Krishna and Arjuna, the Supreme Person and the Supreme Devotee respectively. The Lord admitted Arjuna to be His devotee and friend in the Bhagavad Gita 4:3, and therefore any sane man can guess that the discussion was on the topic of the Bhakti Yoga system. Actually, the whole Bhagavad Gita is based on the principle of Bhakti Yoga. There is a difference between karma and karma yoga. Karma is regulated action for the enjoyment of the fruit by the performer, but karma yoga is action performed by the devotee for satisfaction of the Lord. Karma yoga is based on bhakti, or pleasing the Lord, whereas karma is based on pleasing the senses of the performer himself. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, one is advised to approach a bona fide spiritual master when one is actually inclined to question from an elevated level of spiritual understanding. A common man who has no interest in spiritual values has no need to approach a spiritual master, just as a matter of following fashion. As a student, Maharaj Parikshit was serious about learning the science of God, and Shukadev Goswami was a bona fide spiritual master in the transcendental science. Both of them knew what the topics discussed by Vidura and Rishi Maitreya were elevated. And thus Maharaj Parikshit was very interested in learning from the bona fide spiritual master. Maharaj, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
The birds are chirping in the morning and they're asking questions and someone's giving answers. Where are you going today? I'm going to that tree. I'm going that part of town. What we do there, there's some good food there. There's some nice she-birds over there. They have their discussions. But it's the same. Animals and humans, for the most part, most of the humans also carry on their discussions about the same things. Where are we going to eat? Is there anyone going to? Will there be any danger there? And they go on, so on. So that type of discussion, it has value to them, but they're not thinking very high. They're not thinking how to help everyone. In fact, they're just thinking how to help themselves. Humans are mostly also interested in just not only helping themselves, but taking care of parts of their body, certain organs of their body. And then they think that's happiness. They don't know what real happiness is, that there's happiness on the spiritual level. And instead of getting temporary, so-called happiness, they can get eternal, unlimited. It's like the ocean of transcendental pleasure. Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam. It's an ocean of bliss that's increasing. So this is not known in the material world. There's no pleasure in the material world that increases unlimitedly. Rather, the pleasures diminish as one tries to take more for himself, then he finds that he's less able to enjoy. Therefore, one should be frustrated with this business in the material world. We see that no one is happy, no one is really enjoying life. Even the so-called persons who are well situated, they're famous, they're good looking, they're young, intelligent, they're not happy. They don't know because they don't know what the purpose of life is. So this has to be the beginning. What's the purpose of life? What are we supposed to be doing? And if we don't know that, then how can we be successful? We don't even know what success is. If you ask people, what is successful life? No one will say to conquer over disease, birth and death, solve the problems, and to serve the Lord. That's the purpose of life. To please the Lord, give Him pleasure, and that is also the greatest pleasure for the living entities. The living entities, they get pleasure when the Lord gets pleasure. If they don't try to engage in serving the Lord, they won't be able to get pleasure. That's a law that they don't understand. The more one tries to enjoy material sense gratification, the more he becomes frustrated. Because that's not the way to get happiness, through the material senses. Happiness comes, just like there's a story about how the different parts of the body, they had a meeting and they were complaining that the stomach was getting all the food and they didn't get any food, and they were feeling sorry about that. So they decided not to feed the stomach anymore. They would just take the food themselves, different parts of the body. And so that they tried that, but it didn't work. It has to go through the stomach. The root of a tree has to be connected to the tree. And then everything goes through the root, and the whole tree is nourished. The body's nourished, so it goes through the stomach. Similarly, society is nourished if it gives everything to Lord Krishna. Then everyone is benefited. The animals are, the small insects are benefited, the flowers, everyone. because we're all connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when He's served with love and devotion, then we get satisfaction.
Thank you, Maharaj. Om Gyanatamrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Translation again. Saint Vidura was a great and pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his questions to His Grace Rishi Maitreya must have been very purposeful, on the highest level, and approved by learned circles. So Prabhupada points out in the purport this point about questions and answers among different classes of men have different value. And like Maharaj is pointing out, this birds are asking questions. Where's the worm? When's the sun coming up? And everybody's asking questions in all different ways. So at the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is what's discussed by Sutta Goswami. He says, Munaya Saru Prishto Hambhavat Birloka Mangalam Yat Krita Krishna Samprashno Yenatma Suprasidati. He says, I've been justly questioned by all of you sages because your questions, they're relevant to the whole world because they relate to Lord Krishna. Questions of this sort, they can bring complete satisfaction of the soul. And then later on, he describes Kamasya Nendri Pritir, Labho Jiveta Yavata, Jivasya Tattva Jikasya, Nartoyaschaya Karma Bihi. That the only direction of life should be to inquire into the absolute truth and to take care of oneself. So, yeah, we have to ask all sorts of questions in life just to maintain the body, to maintain our mental health, to maintain all these different facets. But if our questions aren't directed towards trying to understand Krishna, then there'll never be satisfaction. So Prabhupada, he makes the point about approaching a guru. He says one is advised to approach a bona fide spiritual master when one is actually inclined to question from an elevated level of spiritual understanding. You know, this is very nice when one is actually inclined to question from an elevated level of spiritual understanding. So, you know, I was just thinking about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he accepted a guru and he is given this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. You know, and later he'd see other personalities. He'd proclaim himself to be a fool, and his guru called him a fool, and he just gave him the Mahamantra to chant. So he always maintained this humble mood, even though that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the point that I'm trying to make is that it's not that we just approach Guru one time and think, you know, we understand everything because we heard once, but we should successively question, you know, in a humble mood. Always taking the humble road of questioning and trying to understand and elaborating more. There's a certain potency when somebody actually questions somebody and allows them to speak. You know, there's a reciprocation involved. If everybody is intently listening, questioning, really trying to understand, then it's like Krishna gives the speaker more potency to speak more. But, you know, if people aren't so interested, there's not so much impetus. So this eagerness to hear is very much required. To be eager to inquire and to understand. And as we understand this transcendental science of Krishna consciousness, naturally all of our doubts and confusions and blemishes should vanish. Or if they don't vanish, at least you should be able to notice that they're diminishing, or at least notice that they're there so that there's something to work to diminish. Not that we just carry on for days or for years, for, you know, lifetimes, carrying on the same bad habits. This devotional service is meant to bring a change of heart, a complete transformation in our consciousness. Realizing that the Lord is great and that I am insignificant. That when I render service to the Lord and His devotees, I become happy. And when I don't, I become crazy. Lusty, envious, greedy, anxiety, depression, desiring so many lusty things. Actually, we can render devotional service and be in the midst of the devotees, but by committing aparad, this can actually bring lusty desires within our heart. So we can be trying to practice and practice and practice, but it seems like we're not making progress because if we're not following the proper etiquette and standard of dealing with devotees, with dealing with the Lord in our service, then that's exactly what this aparad is. It's counterintuitive. Aparad, it's that which takes one away from love and devotion. So for committing aparads, it's literally taking us the opposite way of where we want to go. I remember Valmiki was here and he was asking the question, who wants to go back to Godhead? Who wants to go? If you could go right now, who wants to go? And most devotees put their hands up, but he's just making the point, how much do we really want to go? Like deep down in the core, the bottom of our heart, which desires are actually there? And there may be all sorts of different desires that come and go, that come to the surface once in a while that we could see, but very deep rooted is this desire for name and fame, to be recognized. I remember I was in Vrindavan and I was hearing from Borijan Prabhu, and he was making a point that it's impossible for a conditioned soul to accept the role of an insignificant servant, in the spiritual world. And I remember one of my friends I was with, he asked him the question at the end, and he was asking, he said, Prabhu, you said it's hard for a conditioned soul to accept this, and Borijan Prabhu cut him off. He said, no, it's impossible for a conditioned soul to accept this insignificant role of just, insignificant servant. And then he went on to elaborate that, all the significant roles are already taken. We hear in the Bhagavatam, which is a window to the spiritual world, there's Krishna and Mother Yashoda, Krishna and Radharani, and the gopis, the chief gopis, and the manjaris. All these roles are taken. But by accepting a role of an insignificant servant of them, that's the consciousness required to actually enter into the spiritual world. But as a conditioned soul, okay, I hear that, the goal of life is to be a servant of God. Like, I'm going to be the greatest servant. I need some kind of recognition for my surrender because I'm great. So I'm just trying to highlight how it's a very subtle thing within our consciousness that we very much crave praise and recognition. I do some service, I'm doing it so much, and there's actually an art to praise Vaishnavas and glorify devotees without puffing them up. I think from more of a neophyte position, we're learning the Vaishnava culture, and somebody does something and it's, oh, Prabhu, you're so great. Prabhu, you're awesome. This is so nice. But, to actually say something that will, inspire them to keep their service going in a more thoughtful way is very, very, very great and very welcomed. But just to say cheap things in adoration that just adds to somebody being puffed up when they're already wrestling their false ego, it could seem like a friendly gesture, but actually it could bring more turmoil to their mind. And one example is, say, every day we're taking darshan of Shri Gaur Nitai. If I asked you right now, would everybody be able to say what color dress they're wearing, what color backdrop there was? Probably not. But my point is, there's one devotee who is intent on dressing and arranging and making the presentation so much nice for the already supremely beautiful Lord. So you could go up to this said devotee and just say, oh Prabhu, the way you do this is so great. You're awesome. Or you could actually notice keen little details that, most people don't notice, and say how you really appreciate it, and it inspires you, to be more attentive in your service. I'm just giving an example of how you can highlight something in a certain way that is more special, rather than just a generic thing that is puffing somebody up more or less. In the Shastras it says that one who's always praising us actually isn't our friend. The one who's chastising us, that's actually our friend. Because it's very easy to see the faults of others, but it's very hard to see my own faults. So, the false ego, when somebody's pointing out my faults, how does it respond? No, I'm right. I know it's best. You can't tell me what to do. Who are you to say this? This is the false ego. So, as a devotee, we should learn that when we're put in certain situations and this is the response that comes up, we should learn to take a step back and just distinguish between the false ego and myself. Because somebody comes up and instructs me, or they see me doing something, and I kind of know I'm not supposed to be doing it, and they ask me why I'm doing it, is my first response, who are you to question me? Leave me alone. Or, Shishi Gurnatai Ki Jai. Every time we have these dealings, it's an opportunity for us to be more humbled in front of the Vaishnavas, in front of the Lord. And everything that we're doing should cultivate this mood of humility. Because real humility is seeing the greatness of God. And naturally, by seeing the greatness of God, then you'll see how insignificant we are. It's not that we artificially try to berate ourselves down and belittle ourselves down, but naturally, as we understand how great Krishna is, the more we see of Krishna, the more we experience and taste of Krishna consciousness, then the more we realize how much we've wasted our time, how insignificant we are, how dependent we are upon Krishna's mercy. So this is wanted. But, there's this example I remember hearing of one of Prabhupada's disciples. He was talking to Srila Prabhupada, and he was asking how, when he offers obeisances, he didn't feel like offering obeisances. And Prabhupada said, just go on doing it. And, eventually you'll learn, you'll experience why you want to offer obeisances. So, this is the importance of practicing this Vaishnava etiquette and culture, because a lot of things may seem foreign to us from a conditioned background, from this, especially from America. But the more that we implement this into our life, then the more we'll understand the significance of it, how it helps us be in a more stable position to cultivate Krishna consciousness. And that's the ultimate goal. Accept whatever's favorable for devotional service and reject whatever's unfavorable. So, this is what's wanted, to accept what's favorable and reject all the nonsense things. This chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam is really nice. It'll describe the whole pastime of Vidura, of how he actually leaves home. He goes on pilgrimage. He's traveling around the holy cities, and when he's traveling, he meets Uddhava. And they have a conversation, and I'm not sure how long that goes, maybe a couple chapters, and then that builds up to the whole long, detailed conversation of Vidura and Maitreya Rishi, which covers so many different topics of the philosophy, time, all these different things. I remember, I'm still a neophyte, but being extra neophyte, a few years ago, reading the Bhagavatam, first canto, second canto. Second canto was a little tough for me to digest, and then I got into the third canto and hearing about Maitreya and Vidura, it was like, whoa, this is awesome, this is great. And then you get into the whole pastimes of Lord Kapila Dev talking to his mother Devahuti, and it's like, whoa, this is transcendental. This is awesome. But here the whole point that Prabhupada is making is these questions and answers, and Maharaj was, giving this point about these birds asking questions and answers, which is from one of my favorite purports from Srila Prabhupada, which is in the Bhagavatam from the shloka I mentioned. But that's the whole point, and we should notice this throughout our day. How often is our mind wandering to questions about the body or eating or sleeping or these different things that are required to some extent, but how often is it wandering towards questions about Krishna? Like you're reading the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. You said you're reading about the Rajasuya sacrifice. After you're reading, is your mind wandering towards questions about what you're reading? Or does it just go back and wander to, the nonsense right away? So it's like we should shift our consciousness to try to question and better understand everything that we're hearing, everything that we're doing, that we're participating in. I went out to distribute books. Oh, did I give it my best? Could I have talked to this person a little bit differently? I was cooking. Okay, did I, add the right ingredients? Let me check it to make sure, So we could always ask questions and answers to better our service and better understanding of the philosophy, and also to better associate with the Vaishnavas. And we could all sit in the same room and be Hari Bol Prabhu, but we don't really know each other. We don't feel welcomed or open around each other. It's very nice to inquire from others and be able to feel comfortable to reveal our mind to others. For this is real association, and this builds a trust that allows us to, go forward in Krishna consciousness stronger. So, that's a few thoughts. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna. So I like this last point that you made. I think it was probably just last week that I was chanting and I was thinking about a lot of these things, and I actually had a question regarding it, because I'm noticing my nature has always been very self-critical in what I'm doing, and I'm noticing the more that I'm in devotional service, the more self-critical I'm becoming. And in return, it's making me engage in less interactions with people to a degree, because I'm more careful of what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, when I'm presenting it, like that. So I was thinking, if I'm thinking about how I can improve, how I had this conversation with Krishnendu, because this happens to me every day, all the time. How I can improve this conversation I had with Krishnendu this afternoon. I presented it. There was faults in my presentation in this way. Maybe next time I can do like this. And Krishna, he gives intelligence to improve, but my question was I'm not sure if that's actually a bona fide process of doing things. I feel like it's almost interrupting my meditation on Krishna. So I'm wondering, is it better to maybe not be so analytical in your dealings and your thoughts, and just think of Krishna and understand that he'll purify you the more you think of him? Or is it proper to actually go through and do as I'm doing, like you're speaking of, and kind of dissect how we're presenting things and dissect the nature of our service and quality of our service in a mood of improvement?
It's a very good question. Just being around other people, it's like Each person creates their own vibration and frequency and their thoughts. So every time we have an interaction with different devotees, or people for that matter, there's a exchange of energy that affects us in different ways. And it's very easy to just be on this plane where you are in that. But everybody has their own nature. Some are more aware of these things, some are less aware. Doesn't mean one's better or worse. But Krishna's giving us the intelligence to see certain things. So if Krishna's giving us the intelligence to see certain things, then there's a certain level of responsibility there. For instance, if I walk across the temple room and I notice somebody, was going to throw away some prasadam, but they missed and it's on the ground. I have two choices. I could clean it up or I could walk by it. I walk by it, that accumulates tamaguna, my ignorance. Accumulates tamaguna, my consciousness. It's not my responsibility, but I have to ignore it to keep walking by. So it's like that's going on with everything in the world. It's Kali Yuga, so we have to discriminate of what's the best use of our energy. But my point is that just ignoring certain things is tamagun, essentially, because Krishna's giving us the intelligence. So that's one angle. One angle is that, what was I going to say? Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna, he tells them, just remember me and fight for me. But then Prabhupada makes the point is that, arrows are whizzing by his head. He's fighting, he's pulling arrows. He's on the chariot. There's all these warriors. It's not like he can just sit there and meditate on Krishna's form the whole time. He has to do his duty, his service. So it's by meditating on different parts of our service that actually is meditating on Krishna. It's non-different. We're meditating on the philosophy, our service that's in relation to Krishna. Just like if a book distributor, he's out distributing books and there's millions of people, he doesn't have time to sit there and just meditate on Krishna playing the flute. He has to meditate on how he's going to get these people the books. But by doing that, that's actually samadhi. Because the whole reason why you're giving these people the books is to give them Krishna consciousness. So you're constantly absorbed in that. So that's another angle. There was more things that came to my mind, but the conclusive example I wanted to give was that I believe it was Rupa Goswami. It's one of the 6 Goswamis. I think it was Rupa Goswami. He was engaged in serious bhajan and meditation. I forget the whole story, but then there was another person who came by and, in his bhajan, in his meditation, he's like seeing the pastimes of Radha Krishna. He's participating in, and like something happened and he started laughing. And like this person misinterpreted as he was laughing at him. He had some fault with him, I don't know what, like he is physically ill or so. Anyway, so he was laughing at him. So then the devotee thought, oh, this great Vaishnava is just, laughing at me. And so, the way I've heard it is Rupa Goswami's pure devotee, so he can't make fault, he can't make offenses, but at the same time, this situation happened, and then Rupa Goswami was trying to figure out why, there was a break in his meditation because of this dealing. So then, I'm skipping over all the details, but basically, he went to somebody and the person said, okay, you throw a big festival in town, and you invite everybody there, and the one person who doesn't come, that's who you know who it is, and then you go fall down on his feet and offer obeisances. So, my point is that, Krishna is giving us the intelligence and we always have to do that. It's not that I disregard my dealings with the devotees so I can meditate on Krishna. What's Narottam Das Thakur saying that Radha Damodar Prabhu mentions all the time? Janame hoy e avilas. And he's praying for just to serve the Vaishnavas, birth after birth, always associate with the devotees. So our dealings with the devotees are very special, and I notice this within myself. I speak to others, and then later the conversation runs back in my mind and I realize, oh, I said this thing that wasn't proper. Oh, I said this, but I could have said it better. I could have said it more gently. Oh, I said this, but actually I was coming from a position of false ego rather than, speaking pure. So these things are there. And then also, say a devotee who comes here and, you know, we're preaching to him and trying to help him understand Krishna consciousness, and then he leaves, it's natural to think, oh, you know, maybe I could have done better in this regard, maybe I should have said like this, maybe I shouldn't have been so heavy about that. And it's hard to say, you know, what we should have done or what we shouldn't have done. But like I said, Krishna's giving giving us the intelligence so we can always fine-tune this instrument so we could better use it in Krishna's service. So I mean, yeah, but service must go on. So it's not that I get hung up and say, oh, I got to figure this out. I messed up this. And I'm sitting there for like 5 hours, meditating on that, rather than, meditating on doing my service and continuing my service. But it's Krishna gives the intelligence. He to the sincere devotee who wants to come to him, he provides the knowledge within the heart to reveal that path, that means. So that's there, and then also to broaden our vision, we can always inquire from another devotee, which takes more of a humble position, but it's always very enlightening. To reveal, oh, I had this conversation with this Prabhu and I said this, and what do you think I should have said? What do you think? It's very helpful to get outside perspectives. So that's a few thoughts. There were some other things that I thought of, but that is a very good question. It's nice. I hope that helps. Okay, anything else? Any comments? Any questions? Maybe we could say something about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in brief. I'm not so qualified. Maybe if anybody else would like to say something, I'll leave the room open for that. But as we all know, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was the beloved Guru Maharaj of Srila Prabhupada, the Simha Guru, fearless in his mission of establishing devotional service, unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Supreme. He was in Bengali, and he would go after all these different rascals who are presenting other ideas. There's a book, I don't know who wrote it, but it's called Asampradayas. It has all the different asampradayas, meaning like Prakriti Sahajiyas, these sampradaya that thinks that you have to be like a hereditary caste coming from Lord Nityananda, and there's all these different asampradayas of deviations from the actual sampradaya. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would viciously rip into these people to establish Bhakti Yoga as supreme. There's many different stories and pastimes of his life. The more that we hear of him, at least personally, I become convinced that this person is clearly from the spiritual world. He's clearly not of this world. He's clearly, such a Mahatma. It's easy to throw the word Mahatma around as we're glorifying devotees. But, this is true Mahatma. He remembered the whole Bhagavad Gita by heart when he was, 5 years old? They called him the living encyclopedia. I mean, Naishtika Brahmachari, born in a pure devotee family of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This is only what we could strive for, is to follow in his footsteps of having that unalloyed devotion to our Lord Sri Krishna, that fearless attitude, and dedicating everything. One of my favorite things about him was he took this vow to chant 1 billion names. So he went to Yoga Pit in Navadvip, and he was living in a hut, and it said that he would chant, like 3 lakhs a day, like 300,000 names a day. And if you actually think about that, like what that requires, it's intense. Even if you chant 64 rounds right now, you have to arrange your whole day around it. This devotee comes up and wants to talk to me. It's like, I have no time to talk, Prabhu. I don't have time to sleep. Because it's like I have to, I just have to chant. I have to chant. But 300,000 names, There's no time for anything. There's no time for air. You just have to be completely absorbed and completely chanting. And in Mayapur, there's monsoon season. I don't know when, the early summer, I guess, I'm not sure. End of summer. Anyways, crazy rain, so much clouds, like destructive clouds. And he is living in this hut, and it's raining, it's pouring, there's holes in the roof. And instead of fixing the roof and fixing the place, he held his vow and he just kept chanting. Think about how much times we say, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to read more, I'm going to chant more. But then, we get tired, or we overate, or, we're feeling a little down that day, or whatever, and it takes us away from that little thing. So it's by making such a heavy vow, there's no time for anything to eat elaborately and opulently. There's no time to fix the hole in the roof. He just grabbed an umbrella and just kept chanting. So that's what we can dream for, to have his blessings, that we can have the same determination and conviction of increasing our devotional service. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the Madhurya Kadambini, he describes that in the stage of unsteady devotional service, one thing is not being able to, we make vows, but we're not able to uphold them. I want to come to the temple on time every day. I want to, do this. I want to do this reading every day. I want to chant extra rounds. I want to learn a shloka every day. I want to, whatever we come up with to try to increase our devotional service. It's good intention, but we may not be able to stick with it. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur definitely did not have that anartha. He was beyond steady in devotional service, and we should pray to him that we can become more steady and increase our devotional service. There's many different stories and pastimes of him. I'm sure everybody knows and could say more than me. One other thing I wanted to mention was that in Vrindavan, there's a very special place. It's called Imli Tamla, it's a famous tamal tree where Lord Chaitanya, when he came to Vrindavan, he'd sit under this tamal tree and he would get absorbed in chanting Hare Krishna. So you could go there today. The same tamal tree isn't there, but remnants of it is there, and they planted a new tamal tree in the same place. But beyond Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanting at this tree is a very significant place of Lord Krishna's pastimes. And without going into details, it said that Krishna, in one episode when he was feeling detachment of Srimati Radharani, that he lost his bodily luster and his skin turned golden color like Srimati Radharani or like Lord Chaitanya. And when Lord Chaitanya went there, he was getting so absorbed in chanting japa or chanting Hare Krishna that his skin actually turned dark complexion like Krishna, because he was feeling so strong attachment and connection to Krishna. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he came to Vrindavan, he came to this place and he noted how it wasn't being upkept so properly. And he made a comment saying that he resides eternally at this Imli Tamla. So he noted how much of a significant place that it is. And I was just reading that apparently they were trying to get the temple back, but they were trying to get control of this place so they could establish a temple and make it proper. But it became too difficult because one of the other temples already was in control, and they didn't want to give up the control. But then apparently Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came to one of his disciples in a dream, and reminded him of this comment he made, that he eternally resides there at this place. So then that disciple immediately went to Vrindavan and took on the mission of acquiring this place. And now this pastime place is controlled and maintained by the Gaudiya Math, and they built a very nice temple there, and you could go there and see there's Lord Chaitanya, there's this quote of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there's other stories of things that have happened. So I just wanted to mention this place in glorification, because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur made such a great comment about it. If anybody has any other thoughts or comments or things that they'd like to reflect on about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that'd be welcomed. Yes.
This story is entitled Washing in Vedanta. The Vice-Chancellor of the Banaras Hindu University, a very famous man of his time named Madan Mohan Malaviya, came to the Gaudiya Math and had some intricate philosophical questions to present to Saraswati Thakur. Saraswati Thakur said, "I won't answer you, but you should ask the devotees who are washing the arti paraphernalia." The scholar then said, "No, I am asking very difficult questions on Vedanta. They won't be able to answer." However, Saraswati Thakur insisted that he go and ask those pujaris who were cleaning the deity paraphernalia at that particular time. So being submissive to the will of Saraswati Thakur, he went to ask them. When he approached them, he said, "Well, now we're busy washing these plates, but please help us, and when we're finished, your question will be solved." Even though he was such a famous, respectable man, he agreed to join in and help do this humble service. After all the brass was cleaned, he returned to Saraswati Thakur without saying anything more to the pujaris. Saraswati Thakur then asked him, "Did you get the answer to your questions?" Madan Mohan replied, "Yes, even without discussion. When I was helping clean the arti paraphernalia, the answers automatically came in my mind." Saraswati Thakur then replied, "Yes, the philosophy of Krishna consciousness can be understood by a service attitude, not by any amount of intellectualism. Sevan mukke hi jivado. Just by reading books and reciting shlokas, that won't help you. Serving God will give us all the answers to the questions in the Shastras." My Guru Gorakishore Das Babaji was not literate, not a pundit, but all the shlokas and siddhantas came to his mouth because he was Sevan Mukta, inclined to serve Krishna.
One really amazing thing about his, was it 3 billion names? What was it? 1 billion? His 1 billion names vrata. It explains in the Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava that during that time he was actually really active. He was the manager of a temple, I think at Yoga Pit. And so even though he's chanting so much every day, he was still very active in managing that temple, and especially in receiving guests. Anytime guests would come, he would personally receive them, and also even setting aside time to speak to the guests for a long time, just like Hari Katha, speaking with them. And I thought that blew my mind, because I was wondering, how can someone be chanting so much and then they're also doing all of these other things at the same time? And I saw that this morning there's a lecture, I guess it was probably from yesterday, but there's a lecture in Mayapur where I guess a lot of the like sannyasis and ISKCON are right now, maybe for Gaura Purnima or something. But yeah, so that there's a lecture in Mayapur, and His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami is speaking. It's like an hour and a half about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and you see like all of the devotees who we know about, and like sannyasis and everybody, they're there. And it was just, I just saw a few minutes of it earlier. It was cool to see all of the devotees together, hearing about it.
It's really nice, because one time I was hearing my Guru Maharaj, he was speaking how he was chanting 64 rounds at one point, but then he realized, he'd see another devotee and like this thing would come up in him, and I was like, oh, I gotta go the other way because I don't want to talk to him, because it's going to take me away from my 64 rounds. So to make this vow to chant, X amount of names, but then still be able to be so like personable, it's really, really tremendous. Not be attached to the vow, but be attached to what's most favorable for devotional service. It's great.
Yesterday, Radha and I were watching Srila Prabhupada Memory by Dinabandhu Prabhu. And he was talking about, he was relaying a story of his godbrother Kartikeya, who was cooking for Srila Prabhupada. And he at one point received some wheat germ, which he wanted to prepare for Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada asked for halava, and so he decided to make this halava with wheat germ. And he prepared it, and Prabhupada, he thought, he was thinking how nice this will be for Prabhupada, this will be real nice for him to take. And he brought it to him, and Prabhupada was like, no. And he used his left hand to say, take it away, which is even more like of disgust to use the left hand. This is what Dinabandhu was saying, so he's moved it away. And this Kartikeya Prabhu, he was very sensitive, so he decided to go to the temple room and pray, and he was crying, and he was praying to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, please, forgive me for this offense, forgive me for what I was doing. And then all of a sudden he heard Kartikeya, and Prabhupada was calling him, and he was like, bring the halava. And Prabhupada mentioned before, like, this is not halava. This is made from wheat. This is not, halava means farina, not this. But Prabhupada said, bring it. And he was taking it, and then he asked for more and more, and he ended up finishing the whole pot. And so, like, how kind, he was saying how kind, maybe I'm missing something, but how kind that the grandfather of our grandsire, the guru, is to us, and how praying to them is so nice. And you were mentioning praying to, this is our great grandfather, basically. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is our great grandfather, right?
Yours.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway, Hare Krishna.
Anything else?
I made a few notes from that same book the other day on the theme Maternato speaking on Sevon Mukhe Jivado. There were three like short little stories in there that really stood out, that were amazing. Let's see. If I can just find one really quick.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare.
Okay, so here's one. I'll just read two. It's like two paragraphs. They were all in this section called, I think it was called Service to Shastra in the first volume. And so here's one that I thought, I just made a note because I thought it was helpful for myself. Not that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did not want his disciples to read Shastra, but he was concerned that they do so with the proper attitude. He accepted study as genuinely devotional only if undertaken for self-purification and to gain knowledge for preaching, and warned against the desire to become a pundit for self-aggrandizement or intellectual sense-enjoyment. Quote, "Hear from the lips of a pure devotee. Your guru will tell you which books to read one by one. Those who pour through myriad text without the instruction of the guru will never get bhakti. On the other hand, if you do not read at all, you will become a prakrita sahajya." And now there's this one story that was really amazing. It was right after that. I think I have it. here. I guess I can just repeat it. I remember it. So one devotee went to him and was asking if he could study Sanskrit and learn the Sanskrit language. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur instructed him that it's better not to do that. Better you help with the printing works, or the devotees working on the printing. Better to help with that instead. And so he did like that. He was helping the devotees in the printing service. But then one evening, this was described as one evening under a street light, reading one devotional text like Hari Bhakti Vilas or something. He just learned all of Sanskrit. One evening under a streetlight, reading this devotional work that they're supposed to read. He just learned Sanskrit completely, so much so that he passed some like government type of like exams and qualifications on it afterward. And so they were publishing the story about him in their magazines to show this principle of Sevan Mukhe Hi Jivado. By engaging in service to Krishna, then everything is revealed. And then there were a few others. I think there was some more about that devotee who was doing the gardening, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would send people to learn from him, even though he was illiterate and he was just doing the gardening.
Wow, that's great. Today was also the appearance day of somebody else or some Purushottama Puri. That's his name? I thought it was one of Lord Chaitanya's associates. Well,
He's
I was hoping that we could at least glorify them in one way, but yeah, you have.
There was just a comment on the Zoom. It said, Lord Nityananda's disciple. This is from Radhastali Mataji.
Okay, Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Gauranatai ki jai. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj ki jai. Panchakapatarubhyascha kripasinubhi vachapatitanam pavanibhi vaishnavebhyo